there, I am Laina, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to introduce you to this presentation that I've created for you. The reason I've done this is because I've been on a spiritual journey for the past 12 years. This is my own personal journey. What do I mean by that? I've been wanting to discover what is the source of spirit within myself. So I've been an awareness coach now for about 10 years, and I assist clients who are on their spiritual journeys as well. And something that is really crucial that we're all going to have to encounter if we're going to go deep into this journey where we're actually going to move from seeking spirituality to actually coming to know that we are the embodiment of spirit itself. This is known as being enlightened or being awake. It's a process of questioning everything that we know that creates our human idea of who we are, until we come to the place that we actually know ourselves as spirit. Now, this is a process that takes time because we're questioning everything that we have believed, everything that we have been taught since the moment of conception. We've been picking up information about who we're supposed to be, our name, our ethnicity, our religion, our politics, and it's handed down to us from our parents, from the church, from the government. And most of us don't really question that. We just take that information and go about living our lives as if that's so. When I began to question religion, my religion of upbringing was Catholicism. So I grew up with an understanding of God, but the God that I knew was a God that was outside of me, a God that was out there somewhere on a cloud, deciding who was good or bad, kind of like Santa Claus. And if I behaved, I would get a treat. If I didn't behave, well, I was going to go to a place called hell. As a child, some of that stuff instilled fear, but it didn't really quite resonate with me. So when I entered my journey, my spiritual journey specifically, I began to question if this God that I believed in was real. Because when I was experiencing the depths of my discomfort, this happened after my mother died, I wanted to have something to cling to. I wanted a God to help me through my pain. And what I came to realize is that I didn't have a God I could cling to. I didn't really understand God because what was taught to me did not make sense. And not only that, in my heart, it never resonated that there was a God of fear, that there was a God that I should fear. So anyways, I have noticed a pattern with the clients that I have been working with over the years who really go deep into their journey. And by deep, I mean they're willing to question everything that they know about themselves, about science, about religion, about God. So I'm creating this little chart for you because I had to question everything I know about religion so that I could get behind where did this come from, and kept going further and further back. A fascinating thing that I discovered was that Catholicism was started in the year 325 after Jesus' death. So 300 and some odd years after the man was crucified, a religion gets created that's very specific, it's very dogmatic, and it was created for the purpose of it was politics, it was for controlling people, even though there were beautiful teachings within the religion itself. So I'm going to take you through a little timeline that I think is pretty fascinating, to help you see how so many of the philosophies that have been started were started because somebody went on a spiritual journey. They entered a journey to discover spirit within themselves. They wanted to have a direct connection with the divine. And from their experience, a religion was created, a philosophy was created. Something was passed down as if that was fact, that was so for all of us. And the reason I want to share this is because if you want to get to the heart of who you are, if you want to discover the spirit, what animates you, you have to go on a journey of self-discovery and find out what is the God of your own understanding. Now, religions are beautiful, they are wonderful, they definitely create a framework for all of us to work within. But if there's something about that religion that doesn't resonate with you, it's just an invitation for you to dig a little deeper. So many of us have experienced a discomfort with God, with source, with spirit, creator, whatever you want to call it, because we were trying to fit our idea. We wanted to fit with what was taught to us, and some of those things just were not congruent. They did not make sense. So let me take you on this little journey. So in the year 2000 BC, so we're talking 4,000 years ago, Moses had a personal experience. He had a personal experience with God, and out of that came the Judaism. Then, 500 years or so later, all of a sudden Hinduism is a philosophy that is blossoming. 560 years BC, again, this is a very long time ago, we're talking 2,500 years ago, a Hindu named Buddha, well, that was not his name, but he studied Hinduism, and there was something about that didn't resonate with him, and he spent 7 years, they say, underneath the Bodhi tree, where he had his own personal realizations. And when he said, I am Buddha, he was basically saying, I am awake. So he begins to teach what he discovered, and that later on turns into Buddhism, which is a beautiful philosophical practice. It's psychology. Then in the year 30 AD, we have this man named Jesus. And Jesus stirs up a movement where he, although he was of Jewish descent, he had a personal experience with the divine. So he's teaching what he's learned. And he could sum it up into two things, 2 commandments, 2 lessons, if you will, that he said. One, get to know God yourself. Have a personal experience with God. And if you have that, once you get to know that God is love, then our job is to love our neighbor as ourselves. Because when we begin to treat others as love, it's because we have known what love is. We have come into a personal relationship with God, Source, Spirit itself. Know God first, then love everybody. It didn't say love everybody and then know God. It was once you have a personal experience with God, then your heart opens up. Now you can love everybody as yourself. So 325 years after AD, 300 years after Jesus has been crucified, Emperor Constantine creates the Roman Catholic Church. Catholic stands for the word universal. So a universal church is created for many political reasons, but also there are some wonderful reasons in there. Creating a religion that was cohesive based on the teachings of Jesus. But I don't know about you, but if I share something with somebody 5 days from now, I don't know that they're going to be able to repeat that 5 months from now exactly as I shared it, or 5 years from now, or 50 years from now. So can you imagine that from the years 30 AD until 325 AD, 300 years later, at a time when the information was shared orally, clearly there are some distortions. Clearly, when you begin to study so many of the folks who influenced the creation of the Bible, the creation of the New Testament, the creation of the Catholic Church itself, there was a lot of infighting. There were a lot of books that were banned. There were a lot of teachings that were left out. So many of the teachings or writings of the apostles that were actually with Jesus were left out. Many of those were banished. Some of them were just found back in the 1945 in places like Nag Hammadi in Egypt. Some of these teachings are surfacing that were deliberately left out. So here's the Catholic Church. In the year 620 AD, Muhammad has an experience, a personal experience with the divine. And from that, the philosophy, the religion of Islam got created. So again, here we're having some individual people having individual experiences, and philosophies and religions are being created and they're handed down as this is so. Then a fascinating thing is the Roman Catholic Church. People within that church, years later, they can't agree that everything that is being taught is fact. So from within the same church, there's other philosophies that are being born because they interpret the teachings differently. There's the Protestants, the Presbyterians, the Lutherans. From 1500 to 1800 AD, so not that long ago, the Baptists, the Methodists, the Episcopal, Church of Christ, clearly, I did not list everybody here, but just to give you a flavor of how many interpretations have come out of this one religion, which was founded on the teachings of one man called Jesus. It's interesting. Jesus wasn't a Christian. He was actually Jewish. Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. He was actually Hindu. And one point that I want to share with you is in 1930s, Joseph Smith started the Mormon religion, the Mormon philosophy. And what's really fascinating when I was studying his life is he was being brought up. He was a young man, a teenager, at a time when the Methodists and the Baptists, they were jockeying to grow their churches or membership, at a time in America where they were pretty much advertising to get their religion to be selected by the families that were going to join. So there was something about this process that didn't resonate with him. So as a young man, he felt very confused, and he was reading his Bible, and he came upon the book of James, chapter 1, verse 5. And when he read this verse, he began to realize that he couldn't just buy into somebody else's religion. He needed to come up with his own understanding of what truth was. So here's that verse. If any of you lack wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. So Joseph Smith decides to follow what the Bible is teaching him, to ask God, a God who was not finding fault with him or finding fault with all of these other groups that were trying to get the Smith family to join a particular church. So he began to have these encounters where he truly was experiencing communion with the divine. He and God were in communion. Out of that came the understanding that he gleaned. Now, of course, at the time, he was persecuted in his own way, as so many others who have taught were persecuted, because, frankly, every time somebody has an experience with the divine, other people don't understand that because it's personal. It's experienced very individually. And many of the ones who had these experiences and wanted to share them with us, well, they were beheaded, they were crucified, they were shunned. Lots of things happened to folks who had experiences. And anyways, I'm going to take you through just a little bit more of this history. 1900s, the Unity Movement. This is the Fillmores. They have their own personal experience with the divine. They are not necessarily affiliated with a religion, but you could say that they were somewhat Christians. They were students, as was Ernest Holmes, who started religious science. There were students of Thoreau, and at a time when there was this movement to understand the mind better, to understand the power that's inherently within ourselves. So these two movements began, again, from people who were not necessarily considered Christians, but had a general understanding of Jesus and his teachings. And the power that is within our mind, available to every single one of us when we enter into that direct experience with Spirit. And then in 1968, I put in here the Hare Krishna movement was started. And the gentleman who started this, he was actually a Hindu. So all the way on down, for the last 4,000 years, people of certain religions, certain philosophical upbringings, have their own experiences, and then they go on to share what they've learned. This has been happening forever. I have had my own experience, and I want to share with you that my personal experience is leading me to know that there is one source of all that is. We call it by many names. God, call it Buddha, call it Allah, Spirit, Creator, Source. It is the essence that permeates all that is, because it is the creative power that all that is comes from. I mean, if there is one God, if there is one source, then there has to be that one source and everything inside of it. There can't be one God that's omnipotent, that is omnipresent, that is the one source of all that is, and then this other stuff out here. It's got to be all inside of this one power. So my personal experience in knowing Spirit inside of me has helped me understand that there is a thread of common truth woven throughout all of these philosophies and religions. And that thread is nothing more than love. That when you come to know what you are, deep down inside, what you are is love. And how do you practice that? How do you embody that? How do you be that? It's shown through compassion. It's shown through caring. And when religions don't care and are not compassionate with others, they go to war to prove their point. But when you're trying to prove a point about a God that is love and compassionate, you actually miss the point. So I'm sharing this with you so that you can see that over 4,000 years, many philosophies have been created, many religions have come up and have been established. This doesn't even scratch the surface. There are thousands and thousands upon thousands of different belief systems, different sects, different cults, different understandings. But until you have your own personal experience, as Joseph Smith realized when he read that Bible verse, we are to have that encounter. Right now, at this day and age, 2015, there is a shift in consciousness happening. It is happening everywhere. We're beginning to become dissatisfied with the teachings about this creative power of all that is. What we're being told doesn't match with what we know inside. It doesn't match with love. It doesn't match with compassion. It doesn't match with the experience that many of us are having, that are opening up our hearts, and we're beginning to see that what we understand about God, about religion, or through religion, actually is very limited to what can actually be experienced when you enter into direct communion, which is how we enter union with the divine. So anyways, I hope that this information is helpful to you. I do not mean to offend anybody by doing this. I just simply want to share something that I have discovered and has helped many of my clients to begin to understand that religion is something that gets created along the way. It wasn't there until it got created. It wasn't there before somebody had an experience. And if you want to really know what you come from, you have to enter into inquiry inside, move beyond what has been taught to you. Because if you think about it, if different people can have a different understanding of God, then we're not understanding the same one God. But when different people have the same knowingness about that one power, now we're entering into the place where we get to begin to be one, where we get to accept everybody no matter what philosophy they like, they prefer, because they're going to resonate with what makes sense to them. But if you are defending that religion or that philosophy because it's all that you know, you're limiting yourself from entering into an experience. But once everybody has that experience where they literally feel it within themselves, they realize that the one true religion, if you want to call it that, the one true teaching, the one true philosophy, is that when we open up our hearts, we begin to express the love that we're all here to share with one another, to go back to Jesus's teaching, get to know God, and then you cannot help but love your neighbor. Because when you get to know God, you discover that you are loved, and all you want to do is open up your heart and share it. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful day.